Art Loft is brought to you by
Where there is freedom, there is expression. The Florida Keys and Key West.
the Miami-Dade County Tourist Development Council, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, and the Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor, and the Board of County Commissioners, and the Friends of South Florida PBS.
Art Loft. It's the pulse of what's happening in our own backyard, as well as a taste of the arts across the United States.
Large public murals, there's something very powerful in that. Because of that power, there's also kind of a responsibility that comes with that.
In this episode, art in the public space, both the challenges and the beauty of creating for the accidental viewer.
Public art doesn't always have to be a big, loud, splashy thing. It can just be the same kind of art that you would find inside of a gallery, but existing in a public space.
With this piece, as with most of my pieces, my focus is on creating something that has some sense of timelessness. My name is Miles McGregor, also known as El Mac. I'm an artist and muralist. It's something that I take very seriously as a public artist. Painting these big, large public murals, there's something very powerful in that. Because of that power, there's also kind of a responsibility that comes with that, and hopefully something that the community can connect with, something that's relevant to the history and the culture of wherever the mural is. These figures are monumental. Normally when we look at monuments, they're famous figures. I don't know if it's like groundbreaking conceptually or anything, but I think it's important work to make these kinds of monuments to normal people. The figures are based on reference photos that I shot of some local young people. The young woman, her name is Mandolina, and she helps manage a nearby community garden. The figure next to her, his name is Jamai, and he's a ballet dancer. The third figure, he's Seminole, and he's the youngest figure that I'm painting. I work all night and then in the mornings. The technique is very difficult. It's ridiculously time-consuming, and the way that I paint, it's all lines and circles and patterns, and the hope is that that kind of consistency, it does something for the viewer, or it can, the same way when we hear some music that we like, there's something about the pattern, it's appealing to the brain. From a distance, these images hopefully look representational and realistic and accurate. And at the same time, I hope that when people actually are in front of them in person and can see the details, that can work on another level, and it's almost abstract. When I paint, I'm putting my paint in ice, to cool the cans and lower the pressure. I'm using certain kinds of caps, and and if it's hot out, it'll change the pressure of the can, and there's a lot going on there. But at the same time, I'm also kind of using the paint in a way that comes out of what you would call a traditional graffiti aesthetic. Like I'm using these caps that are known as New York fat caps, and they're kind of like iconic paint valves in graffiti, historically, and the way that they make the paint spray out in this kind of hollow circle or a ring of paint, but I'm kind of stretching it to its limit. This technique has been kind of evolving over time, and you could look at the one surviving piece that I painted here in Wynwood from 2009, and you know, just over the years, I think I keep trying to find ways to make it more difficult and time-consuming for myself. No, but I have been actually, because I keep trying to push it and stretch it as far as I can, and I think the challenge of painting these pieces, you know, and constantly trying to figure out new ways to make them more beautiful is this kind of never-ending task for me. It's also, you know, this is an important project for me because I haven't painted in Miami in over a decade. You know, the first time that I painted out here was in 2007. There was already graffiti art in this area, no question, but I think, as far as I know, 2007 was maybe the first year that there was really a kind of a larger scale organized mural project. We always hear about street art, and I think Wynwood is kind of world famous now as kind of the epicenter of street art. And, you know, I always point out that the first time I actually heard the term street art here in Miami in 2008, and we were all just like, what is that? Because we were all coming out of a background in graffiti and you know, fine art, but you know, we called it graffiti, you know. I think from my own experience, that was a turning point in this whole movement. I never really liked the term street art. I never really embraced it, but you know, it is what it is. So much goes into it. You know, I really see it as I'm putting love into the art, which sounds very fuzzy and cliche, but it's really sincere. It's almost spiritual, it's almost religious, you know, it's my life's purpose.
If you want to see LMAC's huge mural in Wynwood, just look up. It's located on the Wynwood 25 apartment building near Wynwood Walls. Follow LMAC on Instagram at @Mac_art. Next up, we're going back in time in Houston, where artists are transforming public payphones into interactive neighborhood time capsules. Houston Public Media takes us there.
I personally consider Third Ward the cultural epicenter of Houston. It's a predominantly African-American area. I look at Third Ward as like the Harlem of Texas or the Brooklyn of Texas. You know, it's a place where everybody comes. Either you eat, you go to school, you meet people, and that sort of thing. There's all kind of cool things to do on the Alameda Strip and Emancipation Corridor Strip. A lot of thriving businesses and that sort of thing. And a lot of artists live here.
So the Trade Photos Project is a collaboration of 24 artists and residents in the Third Ward. They're repurposed payphones that have been hacked and programmed to feature audio that is from the Third Ward.
Let's see to the eye, to the ear. It is a beautiful dream realized.
There's 3 visual artists. There's 3 ambassadors who also curate the payphone.
My name is Kofi Tuhaka. I have the privilege, the honor, and the responsibility.
And then we worked with 18 residents that are historically relative to the area based on like history, or musicians, local musicians that have been in the community for years.
All right, how many hip hop heads I got in here?
All of the ambassadors or curators, we all live in the community. So this is not, you know, a news story or something that goes off. We lived it.
There's 3 phones. One of them's got songs from Third Ward musicians, another one's got spoken stories of history from Third Ward residents, and the third one has field recordings of the neighborhood at significant locations. So as soon as you pick it up, it gives you instructions and an introduction, a brief one from all the 3 ambassadors for each phone. And whenever you push one of the buttons 1 through 9, it'll play you either a song or a story or a sound, depending on which phone you're at.
So I'm listening to the Jack Yates family right now, and I know them, but I'm learning some stuff I didn't know.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
And whenever you hold star, it records your voice onto the handset.
You do this.
When you hit 0, it'll play back your recording so you can leave a message for the next user. And whenever you hit the change release button, it'll play you another little Easter egg.
The change you're looking for starts with you.
And if you hold down the coin release switch at the top of the phone, it'll play from an external speaker, so you can hear it with multiple people.
And there's something about pushing a button also that's very satisfying, at least it is for me, as opposed to these fake buttons that we use on the phone on interfaces, right? It's fun.
Well, it was quite funny. I'm a pretty hardcore activist in dealing with issues that confront people of African ancestry. And when I was invited into the project, I didn't know how that was going to work out. But it worked out tremendously because they allowed me an opportunity to put forward the stories, the foundation of the Third Ward community. And they did the artistic part, which has been a beautiful marriage.
My particular phone is called the Trisonic Sounds Project.
What do I love about Third Ward? What's not to love about Third Ward?
And it's really cool. I also have haikus on there. You know, I did some haikus on gentrification and how I feel about that. It's vintage, but it's also futuristic at this point because a lot of people haven't seen a payphone.
I think there's this sense of like uncanny, and I think that's really exciting.
Today, I'm speaking with the founder and executive.
It opens up something inside you, like, what is that? I'm interested.
When you invest in the people, salvation is in line.
I was privileged to have been around when payphones were pretty much everywhere, and now they're not. You know, now it's like you'd have to really dig to find a payphone. So here we have these time capsules with our own spin on them, own unique creative spin on them, and they're really cool. They look great. They're wonderfully crafted, and they're for anybody to enjoy out in public, and you don't have to even put a quarter in it.
So this phone, when we talk about Third Ward, it's talking about major institutions like Texas Southern University, Emancipation Park, and many others. And it's coming from people who actually lived, have worked this particular history. And there's no filter between the people who pick up that payphone and hear the stories, our story told from our own perspective. Being in the artistic realm has helped expand my horizons and the way I look at the world and how we can change them.
We are phenomenal people. Forward ever, backward never.
You're in Third Ward, and this is the history. And this is a way to ingest that history and know.
We are phenomenal people. Forward ever, backward never.
Public art doesn't always have to be a big, loud, splashy thing. It can just be the same kind of art that you would find inside of a gallery, but existing in a public space. I'm Courtney Lamine.
I'm Laura Randall, and we're the curators of Commuter Biennial.
I think so much of what we're doing with the Commuter Biennial is both literally about people who commute throughout Miami, either for work, but also people who commute to see art, that there is sort of this travel component that exists that's not always easy and accessible.
How do we activate these little pockets? So thinking about places like Hialeah Gardens, where so many people live, or commute all the way from Homestead. Let's activate these places that need more visual arts.
I also think a lot of what motivated some of the decisions for what was going to be included in the show revolved around having works that really were site-specific. Lily Martina Lee, she does a lot of work that is inspired by various elements of true crime, and in particular, unidentified cold cases. She found locations where bodies had been found throughout Miami-Dade, and so that was a way to sort of make it very specific to Miami and sort of unpacking the individual details about that specific case.
With someone like, let's say, Nice and Easy, who is this artist duo, we looked for locations for billboards that were heavily congested with traffic.
They created 2 billboards, each that have somewhat slightly suggestive imaging, and it says, "To enhance your drive, call 833-I'm Easy Too." And I think most people's knee-jerk reaction to that is that it might be a hotline for something that might be a little seedy, and you call the number and there's this bait and switch element. Because you call and you're directed to a recorded message, that's actually a mindfulness meditation.
We are nice and easy. You can be nice and easy too.
And one that's specifically geared towards calming ourselves and centering ourselves and sort of letting go of tension while we're driving in our car.
Please keep your eyes on the road throughout this brief meditation.
Juan Landaverde, he's an interesting artist to commission because most all of his work has to be site-specific. In this case, he was looking at the way urban sprawl has reached Homestead. So people living there now aren't necessarily working in agriculture, right? So they're commuting to downtown Miami. And how does that change the landscape?
It's also a really beautiful, interesting piece. You have this contrast of this bare field around it, minimal but highly effective.
Virginia Overton down in Palmetto Bay, so she's an artist who I worked at Socrates Sculpture Park where she had this work called Untitled Late Bloomer. And it was really important that we get that piece in the show.
It has a lot of Florida native aquatic plants in it, so this iteration of this sculpture is unique to South Florida in that way. It does have a bit of this post-nature feel, but also sort of like what will happen when we're gone as natural elements sort of grow back into things. And I think that's something that you might get a sense of with David's work as it develops as well, this link between the natural and the man-made environments, and that the natural environment is always there and it's always going to be there.
These are people not really intending to be going to an art museum or an art gallery. They're just trying to get to work or get home. I'm David Brooks, and I'm working on a project for the Commuter Biennial, and the project that I'm working on is called Studs and Bycatch. So we have this house-like structure, very identifiable. It won't be clad with sheetrock or anything, it's just a metal structure. And then we have a series of taxidermied fish forms, which are all found in the local waters here. As this structure is kind of sliding off of the pontoon barge and looks like it's sinking, because it's going to be situated in the middle of the Blue Lagoon, floating. As it's kind of sinking, there's a swarm of fish, or a school of fish, kind of writhing through it, which is a little bit ambiguous, as if the structure is sliding down and the fish are going to be taken down with it, or if the fish are really thriving and kind of being held up in a kind of abeyance, or in kind of a celebratory state, like a trophy fish. And so that ambiguity is important for me, so that it's not just a kind of hitting one on the nose of like man bad, nature good, but actually it's much more complicated than that. And it's neither of those things, it's just our reality. So really the only place you'd be able to see it is as you're speeding by on the 836. That was one of the challenges, that it's not people that are purposely going to go look at art. So it's kind of the unknowing art viewer, the involuntary art viewer. Also, they might be stuck in rush hour traffic and stop, but they might also be speeding by at 70 miles an hour. How do you create a gesture that can only be seen from a car, from the highway, that both could tell a story in a matter of 3 seconds, or be a kind of roadside attraction that kind of makes a person think a little bit twice about what's going on? Having done work before in the public realm where people really are not intending to have to engage in artwork, sometimes for me in the past it's been the most fruitful of them all, because it really lets people have a window of opportunity they would have never thought they would have had.
A lot of the things that we've done with this show are about making us more aware of the spaces around us, and I think that this is just one of the most exciting ways that we're going about doing that.
Check out more of this night-funded project on Instagram at Commuter Biennial.
My name is Jeffrey Salter. I'm a fine art and commercial photographer from Miami, Florida. I've driven to the Florida Keys many times, and each time I was fascinated by the architecture of the bridges. there's 42 little bridges that are connected, these islands, and they fascinated me. And hearing all the stories about what it took to get those bridges built made me want to do something to kind of honor the bridge. Now, I didn't want to just photograph a bridge. I wanted to put the human element in the bridge. Another love of mine is contemporary dance. So I thought, well, why don't I pair the permanent structural beauty of the bridges with the temporary moment of beauty of dance. I didn't want to have to tell the dancer how to dance. I just want them to organically express how they felt about the environment. They seemed to want to just bare their souls to the project. And I don't know why, just some of the dancers are Cubans, and they talked to me about how they've always felt a bond with that body of water going to the Keys because it's so close to Cuba. But I'm seeking all types of dancers, from modern dancers to ballerinas to tango dancers, just whomever feels that they can add something to the project and whoever has something to say. It's about someone who could really bond with the bridge and understand the vision of the project. There's a little bridge and it has these bumps. I don't know what they are. They look like giant sandbags. And the sun was setting, and I photographed one of my favorite dancers. His name is Adam Laguerre. But I like Adam because he's very physical. And I had him soar through the sky, and the sun was setting in front of him, but there was a moon in the background. And that was just beautiful. And to me, a long-term project is a challenge because you don't want the pictures to be redundant. You want each bridge to have a feeling about it. And every time I go down there, I find something unique. I find a way to move the story forward, to move the essay forward, to say even more. It's a 3-part process. Learn the bridge, learn the dancer, and learn myself. And then put them all together into a beautiful picture.
Head to Instagram @JeffreySalter to see the photographer's latest work. In this profile produced by Oolite Arts, a photographer creates a living archive, driven around as a reflection of Florida.
I started doing photography in about 2002, 2003. It was suggested by a friend in 2003 that I take a class in printing, and so I went to the Art Center and did a few classes. So I learned to print. And that's when I actually learned what a photographer really was, when I saw the first image and I was seduced by the image coming to life, and my life hasn't been the same since. Black Florida is a visual archive that I started about 6 years ago. I started creating the work for it, and I wasn't sure what I was doing. I was photographing the Black communities because I'm passionate about my people, and what I do is I use the visual images that I create to counteract mainstream narratives of Black communities in Florida as problematic. Then Little Haiti, Overtown, all these places reminded me of home. So I naturally gravitated to them. Then I really wanted to be in more of a rural space because, Miami, the big city, can be a bit overwhelming for me. So I traveled a little further north and ended up in Pahokee. Without the Black communities, without their effort to make it happen, there's no Black Florida. So the project exists because the Black communities in Florida allow me to come in and create the images.
Visit blackflorida.org to see more galleries and photos taken in cities around the state. Continue the conversation online. Art Loft is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArtLoftSFL. Find full episodes and segments on a brand new website, artloftsfl.org, and on YouTube at South Florida PBS.
Art Loft is brought to you by
Where there is freedom, there is expression. The Florida Keys and Key West.
the Miami-Dade County Tourist Development Council, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, and the Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor, and the Board of County Commissioners, and the Friends of South Florida PBS.